Hello and welcome to Author Nation. This is season 2, and we are having our first live interview of season 2. So welcome. Author Nation takes you from idea to published book. If you are stuck, if you are overwhelmed, if you're not sure what decision to make, instead of staying stuck and making costly mistakes, join Author Nation and let us help you go from that idea to published book. And if you are just starting out, we have a planning checklist for you. Go grab that at authornation.online. The link is scrolling past you right now, and it is in the description. Today, on the first of our live interviews, we have a really important topic: authors and money. Authors often don't talk about the money side of the business, and this is something I want to change, and so does my guest. Mike Raber is a #1 international best-selling author, speaker, and coach. His skills and capabilities of leadership, business relationship, growing businesses, and publishing a book with his daughter on the secret to raising financially savvy kids helped to make him the father, business expert, and wealth architect he is today. As a passionate storyteller, he is all too happy to share snippets of his personal and professional journeys, especially learning to optimize Eastern and Western philosophies and practices for a better living. He offers a bonus of having a real estate, business, insurance, and financial planning background. Let's welcome Mike. Hi, Mike. How are you today?
Very good. How are you?
Excellent. I'm well, thank you. So the first question I have to ask you about this book you wrote with your daughter.
Yes.
This is amazing. I love it when parents have these projects with their kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, for sure. It first started out when my daughter was 9. She came home from school frustrated because one of her friends spent all her money on candy at the lunch table. And in asking her, well, number one, you didn't have to eat the candy. It wasn't your money. So why are you so mad? And she hits the dashboard of our car and she says, Dad, it's not that she took out some money and bought candy and put the rest in the back. She spent all her money on candy, which means she clearly doesn't understand the value of money. It's like, yeah, I can appreciate that. However, Sabrina, you and her are in 3rd grade. And she says, Dad, if we don't teach kids how to properly manage the money at our age, they're going to end up broke like a lot of your clients at your age. I was like, well, you got a point. So what are you going to do about that? How are we going to fix this? And then she marched upstairs in her room when she got home and started a business called Children and Beyond, teaching kids money management skills as a 9-year-old, and did a couple of interviews on TV and started speaking on stage. And a lot of parents would come up to us and say, this is amazing information, but how do we manage our own money? And I'm a financial advisor, so I would help the parents. And we came to the conclusion that there was a disconnect in the household between how the parents, money is often a very private thing. And as parents, we feel like we need to manage the family budget, family finances, so to speak. And we often don't think it's something that we need to or that's necessary to share with our kids. And because of that, they grow up not knowing how to properly manage their own money. So we decided to write a book. And what's fun about the book is it has all the practical know-hows of the financial arena, but it's spoken through the voice of a 9-year-old up until when we finished the book, she was 18. So it was a work in progress. But it was a fun project though, because I would work on it, she would work on it, and it gave us the ability to really collaborate together as father-daughter and see her viewpoint, how money shows up in the world. And she then used the same skill sets that we talk about in the book to get herself a full ride through school and through graduate school. So it was nice to see a real world example of how, when done right, money can be fun. It can be a game instead of the stressful thing most of us tend to put on.
Yeah, and I think some parents don't show their kids the money side because they don't feel confident within themselves. So we need to make parents more confident, right? And adults more confident. And that includes author, which is what we're going to be talking about today. I'm a little curious, teaching your daughter about finances. Did you have some early lessons about finances when you were young that kind of played into who you are today and those decisions you made?
Yes, definitely. In fact, it was kind of funny because when I was in 7th grade, I decided I had enough of school. and dropped out of school for 9 long months and went down to Marquette University where my stepfather at the time worked. And I would sit and I would help him in the morning in the kitchen and then go up and sit in a business and finance classes. And that was kind of where my entrepreneurial journey began. And over the years, I learned everything I could about business, about finances. But I found when I became an adult and opened up my own business and we had kids, I started making the same exact mistakes that I would learn how to help other people not do, and realize that it's more than just the knowledge, it's the discipline we put in place of that, and had to dig myself out of a hole. And the fun thing, or fortunate thing, wasn't fun thinking back, but the fortunate thing was we brought our kids through the experience. So all three of us, obviously we didn't share the hard part, but we made the process fun. Like one of the things, we had to go to take the kids to Florida, and it was going to cost $3,000. And it was attending a seminar, and actually my daughter ended up hanging out with Jim Rome and Zig Ziglar at the seminar. So with her, because of her business. But long story short, we told the kids, this is our goal. We're going to do this as a family, but we're not making mistakes we made in the past again. We're not going on this trip unless it's paid for in advance. It's going to be $3,000. So every Sunday night after dinner, we had a family meeting and we went through our budgets. And it was funny because the kids, and not to digress because it's not about the author, but anyway, it is about the author scenario as well, is there was one time where I was tired, I didn't want to cook dinner. So I pulled into a takeout pizza. Sabrina, my oldest daughter at the time, was 9, and we had boy and girl twins who were 6. And I pull into the pizza place, and Sabrina goes, Dad, what are we doing? And I said, I'm really tired. I don't want to make dinner tonight. How about we get pizza? Doesn't pizza sound good? All three of them says, Dad, is pizza in our budget? I said, no, but it's just one pizza. And the 6-year-olds chime up, Dad, we want to go to Florida. We'll help you cook dinner. So it became this goal. And at the end of the day, we all went to Florida, and it was paid for in advance. And the kids had their own monies to buy things that they wanted to do. And it was a grand experience. But it was also a family process to get us there.
That's great. Those are great lessons, right? When your kids realize that, well, if I pitch in, I can have this later. There's so many lessons in that. That's amazing. So how has your financial background or financial planning background helped you as an author?
A couple of different ways. Number one, because I had already put in place a foundation behind my business, and I've had different businesses before I became an author. I learned when I became an author, I treated that like a business. Granted, it became a passion project. First, it was parenting that makes sense, with my daughter and myself. And that allowed us to not self-publish. We use a hybrid publisher, but it allowed me to take the time away from what I would have had to spend working to work on a book, because I had the resources to allow me to do that. But it also allowed me to then continue onward, and I wrote another book myself, and I became part of a collaboration project, and then wrote another book. So because of the financial knowledge that I had and treating it like a business, I wasn't worried about, as authors, of course, we want many people to buy our books, and the goal is to make millions of dollars from our books. However, the goal in reality isn't always the same thing. So it gave me the ability to step into that side of my life, to show up and become the person I need to become to be an author, and not have to worry about money.
I really like what you just said. That push to become the person you needed to be so that you could be the author you wanted to be, right? And I think that's key. That's such a key piece right there. But you also talked about, so you talked about the book being a passion, like you're starting out as passionate. So I want to touch on this because I think that's how most authors start. I have this book idea. I'm really passionate about it. I want to get it out to the world. And they're not thinking about the financial outcome. They're not thinking about all the hours they're going to be putting in and what they could get back in their lives, right? All they're thinking about is getting this message out to readers. And they're often not even thinking about particular readers. They're just like, I've got to get this out. And so when it starts as a passion like that, how can we then kind of turn that around and say, okay, but I need to be the kind of person who can afford to write these books. And I need to be the person who has some kind of goals. Should there be a financial outcome writing a book? Like, what is your perspective on that?
I think the first challenge / opportunity, because it's really both, is, and it goes back to what you just about the time commitment, that let's say a person works full time and they write because they want to get this story out to the world. And they're going to donate, or not donate, they're going to designate 2 hours a day or 1 hour a day on writing their book, or maybe 2 hours a week, depending on how busy a person is. Those hours that's spent writing the book are time away from their family, if they have kids, significant other, etc. It's time away from exercise, it's time away from making money. There's a cost that goes into that. And if it's treated just like a business or a job, that if you were going to, start a business selling lemonade on a corner, and you're going to do that an hour in the evening as people drive home from work, you would budget out the cost for the lemons. You would budget out the cost to make the lemonade. You would have a goal that you want to sell X amount of cups, right? You'd be take it more serious because it's a business, even though you're only selling lemonade on the corner. Writing a book is the same thing. However, we often don't look at it that way. We look at it as, because it's a passion project, as something that we're going to do on the side when we have time to do it. And because of that, it's hard to have the consistency through the process of having, I'm going to spend 2 hours a day, I'm going to spend 2 hours a week, knowing the time, schedule it out, put it into your calendar as if it's a job and or a business, and know the cost of those 2 hours. If you make, let's say, $15 an hour in your job or $25 an hour, it doesn't matter. Those 2 hours, you're in essence spending that money, because it's, again, going away from other productive time that you may have. You're investing that into yourself. Also, you're investing into the world, which is a cool way of doing it. There's a whole other conversation there. But by having it as part of your budget, time-wise and expense-wise, it allows the author to take it more serious. And because of that, the book becomes fun and not tedious.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of what you're talking about. You enter into relationship and you give 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 and you give, and at some point you realize you're not getting anything back, and you thought this was going to be a really good idea, but then you start feeling bitter about it. I've met that author, right? I've met several of those authors where they were gung-ho, they were passionate, they didn't have a financial outcome, they didn't have a long-term plan with the book, they just kind of dove into this book relationship, or this relationship with this book. But then when the book went out into the world and they weren't getting back what they wanted, they felt cheated, they felt upset, bitter, or whatever they're feeling, right? And so I think just like when you enter into, and not because it needs to be transactional. And I just want to separate that out. I'm not saying everything you do in your life has to be transactional. If you're going to give a good chunk of your life to a project, you'll probably want something out of it. And if it's not money, it might be appreciation. It might be something else. So can you really speak to that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. In fact, it's kind of funny because as my daughter and I wrote the first book, and then I wrote the second book, and the first book, the goal was to help parents get their financial house in order so they could help their kids or work together with their kids. The second book was on how to build a 7-figure business. And when I sat down and started to write the book, my goal with that was to sell 1 million copies and make $1 million, right? Not exactly that much, but hey, I shoot for the stars, right? However, when I got done, because it was a learning process going through it, and a lot of the things that I did going into writing the book, as an example, I assume sit down, write the book, publish the book, and then people are going to come in forces and buy the book. Build it and they will come scenario. Unfortunately, in the book writing business, if you build it, they're not coming. You have to market it, get this message out there, share what you're doing, share with your friends, write a chapter, share the chapter. It's an ongoing build it and market it, build it and market, build it and market. And now, when you properly launch the book, they come. And they come in great amounts, depending on how well you market it. But it's still like turning on this light switch. It's now alive and out there for the world to enjoy, but you have to continue to market. It's an ongoing, hence writing a book is like starting a business. It's an ongoing process behind just writing a book. So real quick before I move off of that, part of the process is the conceptual part of putting the book out there. However, there's a lot of growing internally that goes into that. In fact, we're going to talk a little bit about imposter syndrome today. And I'll share at that time a story about how life threw a lesson in my lap that I needed to learn, and it took writing a chapter in a book to allow me to learn the things I needed to learn to become a better author, to become a better father, to become a better person, better man. So there's a lot. Writing a book is awesome because it allows us to get our story out. I like to say, share your story, change the world. However, it changes us at the same time.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So I notice a lot of authors just run from this idea of money or hide from this idea of money, and they somehow equate financial gain to something negative, right? So there's this, I notice in the author world, there's this, secretly they want recognition or sell 1 million books and make $1 million. And yet there's this push and pull with, but if I say I want to make money on my book, I'm not giving. And therefore that's a negative thing. Do you have any insight into what's going on there?
Yes, definitely. I think part of it is because it is often a passion project. Going back to the lemonade stand as example, if we were to take lemons and make lemonade out of the lemons and create our stand, we would expect people to pay for the lemonade. We're not going to give them the lemonade because it's a quantifiable business, quantifiable product. Writing a book is sharing our stories, it's sharing our knowledge, it's sharing a part of ourselves, which hopefully we want to do anyway because of whom we are. So when we are sharing ourselves, especially in the format of a story, it's so natural that it's easy to give away. We're not going to be at a party, as an example, and share a story about something and then say, pretty cool story, huh? And the person says, yeah, that's amazing. And then we could say, good, $5, please. We wouldn't do that. So writing a book, it feels a little bit like you're doing that in a way. And we forget, going back to writing a book is like a business, we forget about the fact that we're putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this story, the book, and it now becomes a product. It becomes a live thing, just like the lemonade. So why would we not sell it? Why would someone not happily buy it? I mean, think about the books that I've read. I'm sure everybody here has read a book that has positively changed their mind, changed their life. They have learned something that they were able to profit from. I mean, it was from reading books that someone else wrote that allowed me to become the person I am today. And I would gladly pay millions of dollars to have access to that knowledge because I've been able to use it to make millions of dollars and also to help myself. I mean, not myself, help my family, help the people around me, and do the things that I wanted to do ultimately through the knowledge from the books.
I think it's okay to want to help yourself. Just going to say that, a lot of people say, I'm going to help myself. Oh no, wait, it's not about me. And I think that's part of the puzzle of what's going on. If I'm writing my story, then I'm speaking up for my own self-worth if people buy it. And that can be a really frightening thing. A lot of us don't feel worthy, right? We struggle with self-confidence and self-worth. And so when we put it into a book and we put it out there, it's like saying I'm worth something. And that's a really hard statement for a lot of people, right? So,
Yeah.
If you're watching live, please drop us a comment or a question. We'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you're watching on the replay, keep watching. There is a lot more to come. Okay, if you want to learn more about Mike, you can go to www.100millionstrongspc.com. That is also in the description. Right, Mike, you've been talking about authorship and entrepreneurship. And we're talking about lemons and lemonade stands. So if I were going to start a lemonade stand for my neighbors coming home from work, I would, on the first day, I would buy 2 lemons, not 100. I'd buy 2 lemons, and I would bring out, a cup of sugar and some water, and I'd buy just 10 glasses, and I'd test the idea. When I'm writing a book, you see where I'm going here. I'm writing 50,000 words. I'm taking 40 hours out of my life before I even have any inkling if there's going to be any reward for that. So can you just talk a little bit about the difference between authorship and entrepreneurship, and how they're the same, but how there are some differences in the risks involved sometimes? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. 2 different scenarios. Number one, kind of going back to the price point, that if you're sitting down and writing in theory, that when I wrote my first manuscript, it had roughly 50,000 words in it. And I sat down and I wrote and wrote and wrote. And it was a long time process to get to that. And then finally, when it was published, it became a saleable product. It became something that I could now sell. Up until that point, it was a lot of time. And like you said, I love the example because it goes back to the book business, writing a book. Writing a book as a business, you wouldn't buy 100 lemons. You would buy 2. You would have 10 cups. Yet when we write a book, we feel like we have to finish it before we can talk about it. Versus the last book I wrote a chapter, and I shared the chapter with people. So I got the 2 lemons and I made 10 glasses. I gave it to the world. Now, it wasn't something I could sell at that point. However, it evolved and people would give feedback and I would tweak it. And on one hand, you couldn't sell it because I was actually sharing a chapter with someone who said, this is really good information. Would you be willing to come and speak for my organization on that subject? So I was able to take the subject of that chapter, even though the content was geared towards a book, I was able to take that same content and repurpose it into a presentation, which I got paid to do. So if you like the 2 lemons, the sugar, the 10 cups, if you take your book as it's evolving and share it out, number one, you're going to give great feedback. Number 2, it could turn into another way of earning income while you're doing it. That's obviously not why we do it, but why not, right? And the other hand, though, is it gives you the ability to test the market and see, okay, this idea is brilliant in my mind, but when I put it on paper and I ask someone else to read it, it doesn't make any sense. Or it's one of the things I like in a publishing business is be willing to give away your darlings. Meaning there's something that you think in your book, in your chapter, that has to be there. But in the integrity of the story, does it really? Does it take them down another rabbit hole? Does it add value to the overall story? So there's a lot of components that go into those 50,000 words from start to finish that really need to be broken down and evaluated as you go.
Thank you. When I work with authors, I always ask them, the first thing we do is, what are your goals, right? Forget the book for a moment. What are your goals? And I've noticed that there tend to be 2 types of authors that come to me anyways to work. And I call them the authorpreneur. They're usually the people who want to write multiple books and build a career as an author in the nonfiction genre, because that's all I do is nonfiction. And then there's the other person who says, I'm an expert. I've been an expert for a long time. I need another knowledge asset. They don't always call it that, but I need a knowledge asset for my next level speaking career or my next level whatever. And so the one often is saying, I want to make money selling books. And the other is saying, I see a book as a knowledge asset that fits into a business and my business makes money. And yet then there are other people who say, there's no way you can't make a living writing books. So where do you sit in that triangle?
All of the above. I think that number one, the goal, my own opinion anyway, I think the number one goal of writing a book should be to share your knowledge with the world and use your knowledge to make the world a better place. That said, if you can make money from doing so and allows you to show up and do the things that you want to do, that's important. That's a good component. But number two, it creates instant credibility. It gives you the ability to go into a meeting, as an example. When I was in business post-pandemic, I would bring business cards with me. And a person would be commenting and say, hey, do you have a business card? And I say, oh yeah, here you go. And I would give the person a business card. Now, would they take the business card home and look at it on a daily basis? I hope not, for their sake, as much as I would like to have look at my business card. Will they keep it? Maybe. Now, if I'm at a networking group and I want to build a working relationship with this person and they say, do you have a business card? I will tell them, actually, no, I don't. However, I am working on this book. I just finished this book. Here, take the book. It's my gift to you. That has stickability. That they will take and look at. That when they pick up the book, they will think of me, right? Which you want them to do in business. But it also gives us the opportunity now to build that working relationship, because if they read the book, and also as authors, kind of a interesting little secret that took me years to figure out. We write the book and we expect everybody we hand our book to, or everyone who buys the book, they're going to go home and they're going to open up the book and they're going to read it cover to cover. And it's going to change their life. Or they're going to read it cover to cover and they're going to say, wow, that was an amazing book. Bad news. That doesn't always work. Some people do, and you'll get the feedback that they picked up the book, read it on the plane, it was so awesome. They finished the book by the time they got off the plane. However, many people might read a chapter in our own lives. We buy a book. How often do we sit down and read the book cover to cover? I know personally, I have to read 3 books at the same time because one book I get bored after 1 or 2 chapters. So I'll read one book, a chapter, and then I'll go to another book and read a chapter, and I bounce back and forth. Most people do that. They get busy. So writing the book and getting the story out there doesn't mean that they're going to read the whole book, and that's okay. It gives us the ability to start the conversation, and the book is a great tool to continue the conversation.
Yeah. Good point. So what I think I'm hearing, because we entrepreneurs, that's a different model if they want to write several books. But if you're writing a book for business, you want to think about how you're going to use the book. Are you giving the book away at events? Are you sending it to a conference organizer after you've had a phone call, say, hey, these are my speaker topics and here's my book? You want to think about how it all fits together. It's like a puzzle, and how do the pieces all fit together to have this complete picture, right? I think that's what you're saying. So, be aware of the choices, right?
Exactly.
Earlier, we talked about, or at least I mentioned, people often, I think one of the issues when we're selling our books and putting our books out into the world is because our books are so deeply about us that putting your book out, it's like saying, am I worthy enough? And we fear, we have this great fear about not being worthy enough. Like, am I an imposter? And so, how do you, as a financial planner and now as an author, do you see a link between the imposter syndrome that authors often feel and their financial success?
Yes, very much so. And on one hand, the worst case where I find this, I'll be talking to someone, they have a brilliant story or stories inside, life lessons that I know could impact other people if they would only get it out there. And because it's their life lesson, even though they want to share it, and they do share it, they don't think of themselves as an author. I could never write a book. I don't know how to do that. And because of that, they don't. So the first challenge is knowing, again, if we write the book as a way of getting our life lesson, our story, our knowledge out to the world, whether that's one person, whether that's a million people, it doesn't really matter. Of course, it'd be nice if it was a million people, but if I write a book and it changes one life, I did my job. Now, hopefully, because a lot of hours go into that, one does a lot more. However, also writing the book becomes a journey in its own right, in that as we're sharing the story, the last book that I wrote, The Silent Mentor, as an example, I often joke around and say that was the best therapy I could have ever bought, because I would share these personal stories with people as I'm writing this book, and they would give me feedback, and I had to work through it myself. There were things that I had to overcome. And going back to the imposter syndrome arena, I finished school and did all that stuff. I was by far an A student. People would tell me, you should write a book someday. And I'd say, are you kidding? I can't spell anything over 5 letters. How am I going to write a book? I'm a horrible writer. I don't know how to write, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Good news, there's editors who are very good at editing. There's people who are very good at writing, and they can help us with that part. We don't have to do the whole thing. It's not, I'm going to dig this ditch myself. It's, I'm going to get the shovel and invite other people to dig with me. And those of us that do that end up with a much better book. The challenge, though, and so going back to my daughter and the book that her and I wrote together, that was, even if no one bought the book, it was worth it just because our own relationship evolved, and we were able to help her better understand the concepts. It helped me better understand the concepts. But because I always had that nagging voice in the back of my head saying, yeah, but you're not really a writer. You're not that person. Other people are. And going back to the money aspect, I was a financial advisor. I helped a lot of people make a lot of money throughout my career. My wife and I raised 3 brilliant kids. She's probably more so in that arena than me, even though we did it together. That said, I always felt like I had to read one more book. I had to write, or I had to attend one more seminar. I had to do one more until I was ready. And 2 Christmases ago, I was talking to my daughter over dinner, and she looks up at me. She says, Dad, you have poured everything that you have into me, Sam, and Monica, her brother and sister, and helping mom with their business and your clients. But you're not doing anything for your own business. There's a message inside of you that you aren't letting out. It's time that you get out of your own way and put that story out there for the world to see, for the world to hear. It's time that you become that person that we know you are. And I'm thinking, she's 25 at the time. I was like, wow, I just got my bell rung. But she was right. And even though I had written books, I had done all these things that one would consider a great success, in my own heart, I wasn't yet a success. And once I realized, and then I wrote a chapter on how to keep your influencer capabilities from being overpowered by imposter syndrome, which turned into a course, etc. And I started interviewing my clients. And one client who was a partner for Microsoft, retired, very, very successful individual in mini rights. He and I were talking, and I asked him about imposter syndrome. And he laughed and said that when he was working for Microsoft, he always was worried that they would figure out that he was an imposter. And after 20 years of working there, retiring a partner, being very successful, he looked at his daughter and says, wow, I can't believe I got away with it. And he says, if I can suffer with imposter syndrome, so can you, so can the people who read your story, etc. And he then paused and said, at the time when I met him, I ran a limousine company, and he was my client. So he's a partner of Microsoft. I'm driving a limousine, town car. And generally, the chauffeur and the client don't become good friends. Generally, the chauffeur and the client don't write books and talk about the books together. And on this story goes, right? So he goes, do you know why I hired you to take me to and from the airport and different things that we would do? And I said, because I'm good at my job. And he said, no, because I would walk out of a stuffy meeting and get in the car, and you and I would just talk about life. And I never left the car without learning at least one thing from you during that conversation. You have a threshold of knowledge that you need to share, right? So the more I talk to people, the more I realize that people saw in me this thing that I didn't see in myself. And once I made that switch, and again, writing can be very therapeutic in writing about these stories, I realized that I am the guy. I am the person to do this. If not me, who? If not now, when, right? So imposter syndrome, because it's something that we are taking what's here and putting it out there, there's a lot of insecurity that can go into that. We're exposing a side of ourselves that generally we don't do, or we're taught not to do. There's multiple reasons behind that, which is unfortunate, because if we share that, we can help people along the way.
Nice. I like that. That's really good. So now I'm going to put you on the spot. So once we're over the imposter syndrome and we are ready to take control of our finances as authors, right? We want to pay the bills as authors while we continue to support our writing career. How do we lay that foundation?
Start out with the plan.
Okay.
Know that how much time first are you going to dedicate to this new goal, this new project. I don't want to say project, I'm trying to think of the proper word. Business, project, season, new season in your life. Writing a book is very much a season. It's not something that's done overnight. Some people, it takes 13 years to write a book, which is fine, because it took 13 years to get from here to here and outward. Other people do it in a year. Other people do it in 6 months. It all depends on how much time you have and how how easy the information can flow. And oftentimes you'll write a manuscript and say, okay, it's done, and you rewrite it 10 times. In fact, that's more often the case, which is okay. I think it's important that people know, especially young authors, know that you can write a book. The Silent Mentor, which I published 4 years ago, I want to say. Over the last month, I went back through and did a complete re-edit and found 20 pages with words that didn't quite fit. I took a story and shifted it around. I completely redid the end of the book. And now I'm going to republish it as a second edition, which is fine, because the person I am today is not the same person I was when I wrote the book. And in reading through it, I saw things that I and multiple other people, including different editors, miss, because we wrote the book for that season and time. Now it's a different season. So I guess in a nutshell, know that it's going to be an ongoing project. Allocate time for it, allocate resources, figure out who do you want to talk to, who should you talk to, excuse me, to interview or to get feedback for your story or stories. Who do you want to edit it? All the different things that go into writing a book. Just like going back to a lemonade stand, you need a knife, you need lemons, you need sugar, you need all these different things. As you put it out on the table in front of you to get ready to produce your lemonade stand, treat the book in the same way. And know that at the end of the day, number one, you and the book and the book and the world will be better for you doing that. And number two, you can change it. There is an eraser.
Yeah. So we want to have a plan, and I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but I'm going to add have a goal, right? Mm-hmm. Have goals. It sounds like you're saying understand all the parts of publishing and how much time each might take. Understand the parts of publishing and the budget you'll need for each. So understand your timelines, understand your energy, like 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, understand the budget, and put all of this into the plan. And then I would add, know the goal so that you know how you're going to promote it. Is this one of those series of 3 books that this one you might give away 3 so free, so they'll read book 2 and 3? or are you an entrepreneur and you're fitting this? So like have that goal and have that, how am I going to promote this? Is there anything else we want to add to that plan?
Yeah, know what, as close as you can, what the cost to take it from start to finish will be, and budget that out so that by the time you're done, let's say it costs $10,000 as an example. To if you're going to go through a hybrid publisher or publish it yourself, you're probably looking around that price point by the time you're done with editing and everything. If it's going to cost $10,000, number one, time wise, how much time can you put into this, right? Number two, how much money can you come up with today, tomorrow, next month, right? So if you know it's going to cost $10,000, don't do what many authors do and well, entrepreneurs in general, and start it and then try to bootstrap it as you go through, because you're going to reach a point that either you're going to run out of money, not you'll be at a point where you want to bring in an editor, but you don't have the reserves to pay the editor. Now you have to put the whole project on hold because of that. Or you finished the book, you got the $10,000 invested into this book, and you sell one copy for $20, and now you're $9,980 or whatever away from that, right? So no, it's going to cost $10,000, just as an example. Could be more, but less. Generally, doesn't have to be that much. There's ways of doing it less, but just whatever number that would be, start and tweak it as you go along. And then just like lemonades, you're going to start with, going back to your earlier example, with 2 lemons, and then you're going to know that you have to replace those. So maybe you'll buy 4 lemons, and then you'll buy 10 lemons, right? So if it costs you X amount to finish this book, and you can do it in, let's say, 24 months. Number one, do you have the ability to put $800 a month, let's say, into this project? Number two, if you don't, then do it in 18 months. How much can you put into this project to kind of fund it as you go? So if you can put $500 a month into this project, and I'm not saying if you can't do that, don't start writing. Don't get me wrong. Misunderstand me. I'm saying ideally, in the perfect world, you would allocate the money out just like you would with any business venture that you do, or family venture, taking a trip, etc. How much can you put into it each month? So now 3 months into it, you have to pay the editor. You have the money in an account to do that. So set up a separate account or an envelope, or ideally a separate account. Again, treat it like a business. Everything that goes into writing the book, you should document. Know how much you're putting into it. Know how much, if you sell a copy, how much income in, expenses out, income in, right? Just like you would a regular business. Keep track of it. But also know and find ways. Just because you're writing a book, especially because of a lot of your viewers or listeners are in the nonfiction world, the book is a tool that you're creating to open up opportunities to speak. If you speak at a presentation, you may sell the book in the back of the room. You might use the book as a way of giving value back to the audience in the hopes that they'll hire you to do what it is that you do, right? So it's a very good conversation starter. It's a great way. I've made more money in outside things related to the books I've written than I have through book sales. If I can make enough money to pay for the book, I'm happy. Obviously, if I can make more, that's really good. But it's a tool like any other tool in your business or in your career that you use to further that and to build your audience. So as part of that, knowing as you step into this, again, like you said earlier, what's the purpose that you're doing this? What's the end game? And knowing what the costs will be. And if you go into it and track it on a monthly basis, you're not going to get surprised. If you have something comes up and you have to tweak it, you have the flexibility, the bandwidth now to do it without being 9 months into it and saying, oh man, why did I do that? This is way more stressful than I thought it was going to be. It doesn't have to be. It should be fun. But like anything, if you don't have a budget behind the fun part, stress brings unnecessary stress.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your insight today and your information. Now, you did talk about a couple of things. We talked about imposter syndrome. We talked about financial planning for authors. Do you have resources or ways authors can reach out to you to learn more?
Yes, definitely. The website, 100millionstrongbcc.com. That the About Me page has access to my social media logins, not logins, social media links. It has access to the Influencer's Journey, which is a podcast that I am building out on different influencer stories. People like yourselves out there. If you have a story and you want to share it, reach out to someone like myself and to other people that have podcasts, that have ways to help get your story out there and be open and willing to share it. And I find that if we ask, most people will say yes as long as we ask politely and we bring value. But I'm kind of getting away from your question. But yeah, so that would be the easiest way is just go to 100 Million Strong, and everything that you would ever need or want to know about me is there. And also talks a bit of 100 Million Strong, which is a fun, my passion project. I'm sorry.
You have a course as well about dealing with imposter syndrome, do you not?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, it kind of shares the story, takes this example I gave my daughter in the conversation we had a couple of years ago and breaks it into exercises that I've done with myself, with clients, with our kids to help keep them from getting stuck with imposter syndrome, and ways to like one of the exercises I did with my daughter, which I'm not going to elaborate on now for the time, but she had to learn how to shoot 3 free throws for a basketball event that she had coming up. She never shot one before, and I had an hour to teach her how to shoot 3 perfect free throws as a 9-year-old. And I did, and she shot 3 perfect free throws and made the team.
Perfect. We'll get that link in the description. It's there, and any other links. I know you also have a financial mastery blueprint course as well. We'll get that link as well in the description. Mike, thank you so much for coming today and talking about authors and finances. It's a topic that we don't talk about enough, and I appreciate you coming out and talking about it with us today. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
So thank you for joining us here today at Author Nation, our very first live show of season 2. And we are here to provide you the information you need to have a successful author journey. It is awesome to be surrounded by like-minded people and share your story, share your expertise. And in doing so, as Mike said earlier, change lives. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because this is show 1 of an entire season of interviews. So subscribe to the channel and join us next Thursday and every Thursday for an interview to help you on your author journey. We'll see you next Thursday.